Howard Sackler, the uncredited writer who adapted the Benchley novel and the Benchley screenplay. Sackler was a Navy guy, and he knew about the Indianapolis, so he found that and put that in because it was badly needed to explain Quint's character. I mean, he's monomaniacal, but in the book you have no reason why. Sackler found a reason, put him on the Indianapolis. It was always like a 2-page, single-spaced block of dialogue, and every actor who looked at it, kind of blanched, and directors and producers looked at it and blanched because it's like, it's a monologue, it's an aria. And Stephen was nervous about it. I don't blame him. And he asked all his writer friends to take a pass. Not only John Milius, but Bob Zemeckis and Bob Gale and Paul Schrader. They all had ideas. Milius contributed a great line. I'll find him for 5. I'll catch him for 10. And somehow the mythology was that Milius wrote that speech. But there was like 10 versions of that speech, including my own. We gave them to Robert Shaw. Robert Shaw is a published novelist, 5 novels, a Pulitzer Prize-winning playwright, Man in the Glass Booth. Robert Shaw knows his way around a typewriter. So he took it all, synthesized it, and one night at dinner, as we were approaching the shooting of that scene, he came to dinner with a handful of paper and said, "I think I've got that pesky speech licked." And he basically performed it for the table. And we all went, "Whoa." And Stephen said, "That's what we're shooting." Now, because this has been a recurring rumor, I went back and looked at the production logs and the line script, and the day that speech was shot, Milius, there was an article in Screenwriter magazine about great scenes written at the last moment, and it was how Milius dictated the speech over the phone. I was on the phone with Milius, not that morning, but a few days earlier when we were assembling versions, and I kept very careful notes because I was anticipating an arbitration on that script. And there's nothing that Milius wrote. And on top of that, the phone dictation thing, because of the time zone, Milius would have had to be awake at 5 in the morning dictating lines to actors at 8 in the morning who were setting up and rehearsing to get the first shot of the day, which was at 9:30, which would have been 6:30 a.m. in L.A. So I highly doubt that the speech was written then. And I know that Shaw read us a version, the screen version, he had read that to us days earlier. So ultimately, who do you believe? The guy who wasn't there who claims to have written it, or the guy who was there and says he didn't? Says, I didn't. I mean, I could have easily said it was my speech. It's not my speech. Robert Shaw did that speech as you see it. And unfortunately, because John and Stephen are close friends, Stephen has always supported Milius's version, which is, in my estimation, false.
There is a great story about the origin of
You're going to need a bigger boat.
Going to need a bigger boat line.
Famous lines of dialogue. The Writers Guild once did a program in which they took billboards around L.A. with classic lines from films, and they said, somebody wrote that. And it was like, if you're going to shoot a man in the groin, make sure you don't do it in Texas, from Thelma and Louise. All the great lines. I came for the waters. There are no waters in Casablanca. I was misinformed. Anyway, all those lines, all those writers. And they asked me about Bigger Boat, and I declined. I said I don't want to take credit for that line because I think Roy ad-libbed it. That's what I believe that. Years passed. People say, Bigger Boat, I love that line. I say, yeah, Roy was great. Then I see somebody, one of the fans, now the world of online fan stuff has become big. About 5-6 years ago, somebody points me at a Jaws documentary making of, in which Scheider says, no, that line was always in the script. I didn't write that. So the documentary voice says, well, how did it wind up where it is? And Scheider, and this was new information for me. Now I've been declining. I've been declining credit for all this time. And Scheider explains. He says, we always needed a bigger boat for the production. The Zanuck and Brown were stingy, and they got an inadequate support boat for when we were shooting on the water. And it was every time something went wrong, they would blame it on the support boat because they lost the cable, something fell in the water, it was too far away, and we literally needed a bigger boat. And a month into production, or when we were getting delays from this piece of crap that they were using, Zanuck and Brown relented and chartered the boat that they should have had from the beginning of the production, which was an ocean-going tug called the Whitefoot. And that made all the difference in the world. It was the correct choice. But we're going to need a bigger boat was in the script because the Orca is a small boat in Jaws. But it became a catchphrase for any time anything went wrong. So if somebody muffed a line on the set, or if somebody dropped a prop, no, it didn't have to be on the boat. It could have been in the living room, or it could have been in the town. Somebody would say, "Oh, great, we're going to need a bigger boat," because they were filming. And 2 months of the schedule was taken up with shooting what was supposed to be open ocean. So there were a lot of screw-ups, and the line was always, "We're going to need a bigger boat."
So somehow through that process, it found its way into the script.
It found its way at the precisely correct moment. Roy said it, probably for the 20th time, but it was it was the right time, so incredibly the right time that it became. I wish I could claim credit for it, but I don't have to disclaim credit anymore because it wasn't ad-libbed. It was, "You're going to need a bigger boat" was somewhere in the script at some time in some version.